Yeah, I was just going live on YouTube, and I can go ahead and start the meeting if you would like. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. I am Laura Peel. I am the JWB Director of Information Technology, and I am your technology moderator today. Board members, I want to take roll call to verify that audio communication is working. Please stay present to indicate you can hear me. Now, please mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Susan Ralston.
Present.
Mike McAra.
Present.
Rick Butler.
Present.
Brian Ongst.
Present.
Bob Dillinger.
Present.
Dr. Grego is not present. Bernie McCabe.
I'm here.
Chief Milliken.
Here.
And Judge Moore. No, and Commissioner Seal.
Here.
Thank you.
Morning.
Now we'll turn it over to CEO Beth Houghton.
Good afternoon. I'm Beth Houghton, CEO at JWB. This regular board meeting of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas is being conducted remotely, consistent with Florida Governor DeSantis's Executive Order 20-69 of March 20th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency throughout the state of Florida, given the outbreak of the novel coronavirus COVID-19. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus and reduce risk of COVID-19 illness, we have been advised and directed by the state to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order EO 2069 suspends the requirement of the Sunshine Law to have all meetings in a specific public place and to require a quorum to be present in person. EO 2069 has been extended by EO 20-139. These executive orders, posted on JWB's public notices website, allows public bodies to utilize communications media technology to conduct its business. For this meeting, JWB is convening via Zoom webinar and telephone conference posted on our website, which clarifies how the public may join and participate. A public meeting notice was published in the Tampa Bay Times on June 3rd, 2020, as required by Section 189.015 of the Florida statutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded on Zoom webinar and YouTube Live. Also, some attendees are participating by telephone conference. Participants are advised that people may be listening who do not provide comment, and those persons are not required to identify themselves. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording and will become a part of the public records of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County. Laura Peel, JWB Director of Information Technology, will serve as the technology moderator of the remote participation by JWB board members, JWB staff, presenters, and the public.
Thank you. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Susan Ralston.
Here.
Mike McAra.
Here.
Rick Butler.
Yes.
Brian Ongst.
Yes.
Bob Dillinger.
Yes.
Bernie McCabe.
Yes.
Chief Milliken.
Yes.
Commissioner Seal.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. Beth Houghton.
Yes.
Laura Brock.
Yes.
Judith Warren.
Here.
Linda Leedy.
Yes.
Millicent Battle.
Yes.
Ooh, echo. Diana Carroll.
Yes.
Lynn Delator.
Here.
Laurie Lewis.
Yes.
Deb Pruitt.
Yes.
And of course, we cannot forget Colleen Flynn.
Yes.
Thank you. Please mute your devices until called on to speak.
All of the materials for this meeting are posted on the JWB's website with the agenda for the meeting, and we recommend that JWB's board members and the public follow The agenda is posted unless we note otherwise. We're now turning to the agenda, but before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each item on the agenda. After staff has presented the item, the chair will entertain questions by board members. Please physically raise your hand in Zoom webinar to be recognized. If you are on a telephone conference line, please press *9 so the moderator may unmute your line. We will have public comment before the vote on each action item and during the open agenda. Please use the raise hand feature in Zoom webinar or press *9 if you are on a telephone conference line to be recognized to speak. The moderator will call on each person by name or the last 4 digits of the call-in number, allowing 3 minutes for comments. Finally, each vote will be taken as a roll call vote. Further, for all participants, board members, staff, and the public, please remember to mute your phone or device when you are not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. With that, I will turn the meeting over to Mrs. Ralston, JWB Board Chair, to commence with our regular JWB board meeting.
Thank you, Beth. And Laura Peel, I'd like to recognize that Judge Moore has joined us. And with that, I'd also confirm that we have a quorum. Confirmed? All right, then we're going to the agenda, item number 2, which is the consent agenda items. And I would call for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to move.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, before that, Laura Peel, do we have anyone want to speak on these items?
I'm going to give it just a moment, but it does not appear so.
Then would you do a roll call vote to approve this item?
Yes, I will. When I call your name, please state your vote. Susan Ralston,
Yes.
Mike McCurrick,
Yes.
Rick Butler,
Aye.
Brian Ongst,
Yes.
Bob Dillinger,
Yes.
Bernie McCabe,
Yes.
Chief Milliken,
Yes.
Judge Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Seal.
Yes.
Thank you.
This motion is approved. Going on in the agenda, for those listening in and watching, we're on item 3A, ratification of CEO approvals of contracts for emergency funding and emergency purchases between April 15 and June 2nd, 2020. Laura Brock, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. We have here before you information that we need to ratify. As a result of the declared disaster on March 13th, 2020 by the Pinellas County Emergency Management, the board has delegated authority to our CEO to approve contracts for emergency funding from our contingency budget in order to meet urgent needs. And included in the attachment are 2 items that we have like to discuss today. The first is additional emergency funding spending to St. Petersburg Free Clinic for $100,000. And this was to acquire additional food bulk purchases to continue to help supplement the food and distribute through the Shepherd Center, RCS Food Pantry, and the Florida Dream Center during this COVID-19. The second item is $75,000 to Feeding Tampa Bay. And this was to cover costs for COVID-19 as well for the summer break spot grab and go. And this was not reimbursed through the USDA foods from Pinellas County for children. Just to point out that these were expenditures in addition to the ones that we discussed last month. Last month, we had approved $417,462 from our contingency budget. Today, we're approving $175,000, which brings us up to a total of $592,462 up through June 2nd, 2020. In addition, we are required to get approval from you for any emergency purchases contracts that exceeded $50,000. And included in your attachment is the information regarding the Tampa Bay Network to End Hunger contract and that amount has been amended to 51,885, which brings us in line with the funding that we need to pursue. I'll turn it back over to Chair Ralston.
Thank you. Let's get a motion on the floor and we'll see if there's any discussion. How about a motion?
So move.
I watched Bernie move and Mike second. And before we go to a roll call vote, is there any discussion on this?
I do not see any public comment.
And no public comment, then Laura, please proceed with the roll call vote.
Yes. When I call your name, please state your vote. Susan Ralston,
Yes.
Mike McCurrick,
Yes.
Rick Butler,
Yes.
Brian Ongst,
Yes.
Bob Dillinger,
Yes.
Bernie McCabe.
Yes.
Thank you. Chief Milliken,
Yes.
Judge Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Seal.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that motion carries. Action item, we're on 3B, which is reduction of surplus inventory. Laura Peel, the woman of
Yes.
the hour. You're on this one.
Yeah, this one is me. Good morning. So as you're aware, twice a year, we take a look at our equipment and furniture and assess its usefulness and whether it meets the current needs of JWB. Before you in your board packet, you will see a list of the items we are recommending to remove from our inventory. All of these items have no net value at this time and will either be recycled or donated to a 501c3 that can use it. So that's about it on that one. If anybody has any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
It mentions a standing safe as being
Yes.
inefficient. How does a safe become inefficient unless you lost the combination?
Well, we actually did for a while, but we got it. We have no use for it. So we were keeping small zip drives in it and that kind of thing, but the safe is about 3 or 4 feet tall and is sitting in an office and is unused at this time. When it was purchased some years ago, it was believed that we would keep passwords and other valuable things in it, but we just don't have any items that we need to keep in a safe that size.
Mike McCurrick?
Yeah, just a clarification on one, if you would. There is an item which is a Verizon MiFi,
Mhm.
and it said it was lost. Can you just give me a little bit of an explanation?
Yes, sure. So the Verizon Wi-Fi's are the staff Wi-Fi devices. They're about this big. We actually receive them for free. We pay for the service, but we don't pay for the MiFi's themselves. And a staff member was unable to locate theirs. Again, they're smaller than a cell phone. So we produced an incident report. We were able to cancel that line and replace it with a new one at no cost. But
Thank you.
because we track them, we bring them to you as an item. But yes, that one was actually lost.
Understand. Thank you.
Mhm.
I have one question before we call for the motion. Laura, years ago, these items used to be put on display in the conference room. What's the process now for the agencies to access this material?
So the ones on display actually came from the county. We've never actually, maybe we did once, but what we do is we take pictures of every single item that is available for an agency. And we've always given first preference to our funded agencies, but we're also looking at any agencies that might need it for COVID relief this time. But we send out an email to all directors. Thank you.
Yeah, I've just been around a while. I remember sending some staff and going shopping at the consignment store, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I remember.
Yes, with that, a motion to approve this item, please. Chief Mulligan, and a second.
Second.
Mike McCurrick, and any interest in public interest to speak to this?
I do not see any public comment.
All right, let's do a roll call vote.
Okay, when I call your name, please state your vote. Susan Ralston,
Yes.
Mike McCurrick,
Yes.
Rick Butler,
Yes.
Brian Ongst,
Yes.
Bob Dillinger,
Yes.
Bernie McCabe,
Yes.
Chief Milliken,
Yes.
Judge Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Seal.
Yes.
Thank you.
This motion carries. We're on action item 3C, which is to approve, I believe it's 2 community council appointments in South County. So for that, I will turn it over to Millicent Battle, our neighborhood outreach coordinator. Millicent, are you there?
I'm muted, I'm sorry.
Welcome.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, fellow board members, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Millicent Battle, Community Planner and South County Community Council Liaison. I am before you to recommend 2 applicants to serve on the council, Ms. Constance Shaw and Ms. Phyllis Ware Winchester. Ms. Constance Shaw is the Children's Literacy Outreach Coordinator with Breathe Strong Pinellas. Ms. Shaw has over 20 years experience educating school-age children, adapting and modifying curriculum that best fits the needs of special education children. She is a polished professional with a proven track record of success in family support, program development, and community relations. Ms. Shaw's previous work experience includes being a home visitor with the HIPPY program and a truancy navigator with Bethel Community Foundation. Her areas of expertise includes case management, psychosocial assessments, community resources, event planning, leadership development, communication, and mentoring. Ms. Shaw is currently on the boards of I Support Youth and the Pinellas County Council Parent Teacher Association. She is also a mentor with the Women in the Making. Ms. Shaw is a graduate of Grambling State University and is currently enrolled in Asbury Theological Seminary. Ms. Phyllis Ware Winchester is a native of St. Petersburg and a graduate of Lakewood High School. She attended Howard University and graduated from Lakewood High School. She attended Howard University and is a graduate of the University of South Florida with a degree in mass communication and advertising. Ms. Winchester has worked in the local Tampa Bay media industry for WTOG TV 44, WMGG Magic 96 Radio, St. Petersburg Times, and Tampa Tribune. She then pivoted her career to real estate, working at Merrill Lynch Realty, later relocating to Atlanta, Georgia. Ms. Winchester has been in the real estate industry for over 30 years, working for a variety of firms in both the residential and commercial sectors, before owning her own company, Aware Realty, based in St. Petersburg. Ms. Winchester recognizes the value of home ownership and has dedicated her life to increasing home ownership. Her goal is to promote and increase housing equity and accessibility in marginalized communities and neighborhoods across the Tampa Bay area. Ms. Winchester is a HUD certified housing counselor, currently serving as a community liaison for the nonprofit Neighborhood Home Solutions, where she educates underserved populations about home ownership. Upon approval, there will be a total of 13 South County Community Council members. Are there any questions?
I just want to review the last statement. Upon approval of these appointments, there will be 39 community council members, 10 in the north, 16 mid-county, and 13 South County. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. And wow, we have 2 very, very qualified candidates here. We're lucky to have them. How about we call at least for a motion to approve and so then see if there's any discussion.
So move. This is Brian.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. Karen Seal, second. Any discussion other than welcoming these 2 very, very fine women to our South County Council?
This is Judge Moore. I work with Ms. Shaw in truancy, and I hated to lose her because she was the best asset that I have. I think that she would be an asset to our board.
Excellent. Any other comments?
Just one very simple one. I think the South community has gained two very, very special women in support of the children of our community. So I'm really happy to see them joining.
Very good. Laura, is there any interest in public comment?
At this time, there is no public comment.
Well, before I call for the roll call vote, if these women are on the line or participating in any way in this meeting, I'm just very grateful that you stepped forward to serve JWB in your community. So with that, I'll turn it back to Laura to please call the roll call vote.
Yes. When I call your name, please state your vote. Susan Ralston,
Yes.
Mike McCarrick,
Yes.
Rick Butler,
Yes.
Brian Ongst,
Yes.
Bob Dillinger,
Yes.
Bernie McCabe,
Yes.
Chief Milliken,
Yes.
Judge Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Seal.
Yes.
Thank you.
This motion carries. We'll move on to item 4, which is our presentations, and we'll begin with Juvenile Welfare Board activities during COVID-19 crisis and turn it over to Beth.
Thank you. Well, so one thing, things have not slowed down for the Juvenile Welfare Board or its staff or most of its funded agencies. Some of these, the things we're about to tell you, what we've done is build on what I reported to you in the last meeting, but I won't list all of those things. I'll just tell you a little bit about our response and funded agency support since the last board meeting. So since then, you approved the additional 60-day disaster funding, which enables our funded agencies to continue with their support from the JWB. We have shared resources with all of them and others regarding financial assistance available, both the Paycheck Protection Program loans or the PPP for those agencies, as well as Pinellas Cares small business grants and Pinellas County nonprofit funds. We have processed a total of 21 budget amendments and reallocations totaling approximately $500,000 with 15 funded agencies. So these were already budgeted funds that we have allowed and sometimes frankly encouraged our funded agencies to pivot to better respond to the COVID environment. So it includes staffing, salaries, professional sanitation services, PPE supplies, online learning, food and operational costs. I would want to point out in particular, we have, with the county's COVID CARES dollars that are direct assistance dollars for individuals, we have pivoted space and people, both our people and our contracted navigators within the FSI program to assist the county with that program. We've also utilized the spaces and the family service workers at the neighborhood family centers, in addition to support the Pinellas COVID CARES program. So for instance, that gives access to people who qualify to go into a physical place and be able to scan documents, for instance, or have some personal assistance. So all of that has been done under the auspices of the Pinellas County program. But with that county program, we saw that the immediate need for the FSI dollars were not as great. The county program is broader and provides more assistance. No doubt at a later time, the FSI dollars and services will be needed. JWB staff have been highly productive. Staff have become amazingly proficient, maybe not me, but most of them, with video conferencing, with softwares and tools for sharing documents, and that is both internally and externally. Again, I give great credit for our IT platforms and people and capacity before this started, that we were most of the way there before we started, and then our full staff and IT have moved mountains to make sure that we could continue to be effective. We have continued to monitor broader community information, governmental resources and other things, and then share that information and create and support community partnerships. I presented this slide last month. It is certainly continued as resources and issues continue to emerge and shift and change. So we have been a major source of information, both on phone calls with our funded agencies, as well as then emailing out all kinds of documents and assistive tools for them, so that all of them don't have to do those things from scratch. One of the areas that we've done a great deal would be in emergency food assistance. And you heard some about some significant assistance we provided before the last board meeting. One thing you would want to know is that we are exploring FEMA reimbursement for JWB funding of COVID food relief efforts that appear to be within those parameters. And so we are, the guidance seems to be emerging. This is not a FEMA event like has happened before. So that guidance is emerging all of the time, but we are on path being, with the timelines, and we are registered with FEMA and so on. We have also allocated additional funds for summer food assistance, Meals on Wheels for kids. This was within our childhood hunger budget, was $24,000. Prepackaged meals for summer programming, $173,000, again, within our budget. And then the $100,000 for food banks and food pantries, that was one of our emergency expenditures. And then really, that's for summer. The $75,000 would really be in addition to that, to Feeding Tampa Bay for their grab and go sites that were our break spot grab and go sites. In terms of community wellness, we have taken leadership in a variety of ways. During this last time period, we hosted a really well-received Facebook Live event featuring child adolescent psychologist Dr. Adele Salazzo and JWB Chief Administrative Officer Linda Leedy for Mental Health Awareness Month in May. And again, it was very well done and very well received. We've held virtual community conversations with our North, our Mid, and our South community councils to share, for them to share across the council, and for us to hear what directions that they gave us and their perceptions of needs within their own communities. And we were also able to connect and provide resources. Some of them provided us resources we didn't have. We provided resources out to all of them. Again, there are a lot of resources in this community. Sometimes the question is being able to find them. And we've really been a hub and tried to do a lot of that. We produced a video series to spotlight dads as part of JWB's ongoing fatherhood collaborative. And that will be launching in June. That's this month, but in honor of Father's Day. And we partnered with Corey Thornton to produce songs and a music video to support digital online learning and summer reading, particularly to end the school year strong. Our family service initiative, I really mentioned before that we pivoted so that we moved a lot of our resources, our infrastructure, if you will, to support the Pinellas COVID CARES funds. At this point, that funding goes through June 30th. It is, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's not terribly clear right now when the FSI funds and processes will be more needed. And they are active. I don't mean to say that they're not, but the numbers that had really spiked in March and then in April have flattened out as COVID CARES came online. Laura Brock mentioned before the contingency fund investments of $592,462. So I won't go over those any further, but to say that the last two on this list were the two new ones, and they were earlier in the agenda, and you were notified of those and ratified those. We have often said it has been business as usual in unusual times, and by that we mean that while we are doing all of the things that you just saw that are in response to COVID, everything we were already doing still needed to occur. So some of those things since the last board meeting include the middle school academy procurement that is underway with recommendations to the finance committee on June 25th, and then that will come to you. And we hosted a virtual campaign for grade level reading, a partner meeting that we would have done anyway, but we would have done it in person. We've continued to try to find fun things to do to boost staff morale. So efforts continue, including a recent video conference parody skit that was done by some of our sterling actors in the JWB employee group. And we also, we have town halls every 10 days or so where I update folks on what's going on. And we try to include some fun things in that. So the most recent was a town hall trivia that I did okay on, but others did much better. We have done significant research and surveying of our staff relative to what our posture should be regarding reopening the JWB office. And first, we surveyed our staff regarding their own productivity and their own concerns, because it was our perception that they were being incredibly productive, working in the manner that they were, and both for their safety and for community safety, there was no point in pushing opening back up our office in any way unless there was a compelling reason to do so. And we really found no compelling reason to do so. Further, we did significant research as to best practices as an employer, and taking note of our space and its configuration, with a lot of folks working in cubicles that are fairly close to each other, and determined that we will continue our current telecommuting arrangement for the foreseeable future. We will of course continue to evaluate that as we go along. In the meantime, one of the things we're doing is equipping conference rooms 105 and 185 with audio or video feeds, so that for future board meetings and other large meetings, there will be the opportunity to socially distance, but we can overflow into those two rooms and have full video and audio ability. And this time gives us that opportunity to do so. So with that, I'll open it for any questions you have of me, or any I might punt to other staff.
I have a question. I went by the Casa place the other day that's by St. Anthony's.
Yes.
And it looked empty. It appeared empty.
Well, I know they have had some families there. I don't have a recent update on how many families. I don't know, Judith, do you know anything else that I don't know?
Yeah, they're definitely serving clients. I actually spoke with the CEO yesterday, Lariana Forsyth. I don't know if it's a reduction, but I definitely know she's got clients.
Okay, so it has been used.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
yes.
good.
Questions, comments? Mike McCurrick?
I just wanted to say a couple things. One, I commend the staff and Beth for the hard work that you've done and how you've been able to adapt to what's what we've been going through during this pandemic. I think though, as we spoke in our one-on-one discussion, I'd like to just bring up, I think it's extremely important as we go forward, and we need to begin to do this sooner than later, is really focusing on the strategy of what are we doing next. And also really take a good hard look at the fact that things have changed and things will change and will need to be adjusted and refocused based on this pandemic and whatever else may come behind it. And it's important that we really hone in on what are those changes and how we will address them and then adapt to them as we move forward. So I think, we've been pushing off our strategy discussions for a while because of all of this. Totally understood. I think we need to step up now and make sure that we begin those and we really put a concerted effort together to create what I'm going to call the new future.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because in my CEO report, I'll be talking a little bit about that, and your chair has been nudging us, I will say, in that direction as well.
Thank you, Mike. Like minds, we had a lengthy discussion recently with myself and the executive team, and I'll leave it to Beth to roll out our discussions of exactly the topic you brought out. The strategy must continue to stay front and center of the work of this board and our executive team, and it's exactly the conversation that we had last week. So I'll defer that to Beth in her executive report and move on to item 4B, which is hearing no other comments on that presentation. We'll move on to item 4B, which is the summer capacity in JWB funded childcare programs. And that goes to Judith Warren to give us an update.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So COVID-19 has had a tremendous impact on both JWB funded early learning centers, but both our community and school-based out-of-school time providers. So this morning with brevity, I'm going to cover 4 things. I'm going to review the timeline on both the closure and the reopening of the centers, review what preparations have been taken to reopen, discuss some challenges that we've experienced right out of the gate, and talk about next steps for summer and for the school year. So a little bit of background and an important distinction on the first bullet is on March 13th, it was the Florida Commissioner of Education who initially closed the schools for 2 weeks, but then we all know that ultimately the decision was made that all academic instruction would go virtually. And I raised that date because it was the catalyst of closure for many of our school-age child care centers. That closure impacted approximately 6,451 participants. I will say categorically that we had begun to see a drop-off of children attending because I think parents were fearful. There were 3 organizations that provided essential relief care. That was the YMCA of Greater St. Pete, the YMCA of the Suncoast, and our club. Countywide, over 60% of the ELC funded centers and home-based centers closed due to the COVID-19 crisis. I do want to continue to emphasize, though, that parents had, there was a reduction in the amount of kids that were actually attending. All right, so now I'm going to fast forward to May 22nd, and that's when the governor issued the order that all youth programs could reopen. Beth immediately got on the phone with Dr. Cho and the licensing board to determine if there was any local guidance. Would we see local restrictions? And we didn't see any. An actual order was issued from the sheriff and the county administrator that really just underlined that there would be no restrictions. And as a result, 22 schools were open for summer school-based programming, and we had 23 community programs open up. And the start dates have varied between June 1st and June 8th. All right, so all during that time between March 13th and even now, we've been doing weekly conference calls with our programs. We want to make sure that we're in communication, that we're giving them the best information we know, and that also they're able to provide us with any questions or concerns. We've worked with them and they've done an excellent job in procuring equipment. They've participated in CDC and Pinellas Licensing Board training. And they've also have all done sanitization protocols. All right, so what does it look like now? What is the new normal within our childcare settings? So typically the parent does a curbside drop off. They take temperatures. They do questionnaires, which I think we've all become familiar with. You know, have you been in contact with anyone? Have you traveled? The next one is an important distinction, and that is that the children remain with the same kids and the same teacher all day. The CDC has really stressed that this is best practice. It's best not to intermingle the children because if there is an outbreak, then that makes it more impactful. We continue to monitor the CDC guidelines. The next one I want to pause a minute on too, and that is ratios. So during a typical summer, a staff to child ratio for a school-based program is 1 to 25. And for 0 to 5, it's much less because of the heightened needs of those children. But this year, our school-based providers are going to go to a 1 to 15 ratio, and our community providers, for the most part, are doing a 1 to 9 ratio. CDC gave initial guidance that the groups should stay at 10, but they later removed that guidance. So again, 1 to 15 school-based, or 7 to 9 within our community programs. And then we are engaging in safe food practices. So that was preparation. Okay, so now is where you see the reduction of capacity and the ultimate impact. So starting from our left, you will see our community out of school time providers. And for the edification of the group, that's TASCO, PAL, City of Clearwater, Boys and Girls Clubs, Arts for Life, Family Resources, and Cops and Kids. This group has, for the most part, gone to a 1 to 9 ratio. And because of that, they are serving 62% fewer children. All right, I will say that within those programs, they still have capacity. Again, I think parents maybe still be fearful to take their children to childcare. And so there are many programs that still have open capacity. Our neighborhood family centers provide summer camp experience, and they also are going to the 1 to 9 ratio. And we'll see a 56% drop in capacity there. Our early learning sites, you're going to see much less impact because their ratios are lower anyway. So only a 26% reduction there. And finally, I'm going to call it Summer Bridge. Historically, our summer programming at the schools was wrap care. So the school would provide 4 hours of academic instruction, and we would, with 3 providers, do morning and afternoon care, and then all day Fridays. This year's Summer Bridge is completely virtual. And so those programs now are providing care all day, but they're putting in the 2 hours of virtual Summer Bridge. And the school, and we thank Dr. Grego for this, opened 22 schools Again, 1:15 ratio, so that results in 2,259 less children being served. All right, so what's not written on the slide is in week 1, we had 4 centers shut down because either a staff member tested positive or a child tested positive. So we do anticipate that we're going to see that throughout the summer. And, you know, the first step is always to call the health department, epidemiology, and they give the program guidance on you know, how to sanitize, what to shut down, and whatnot. We'll work with the school system to plan for 2021 school year. We continue to monitor the effectiveness of our safety protocols. We created a really neat partnership with our school-based health clinics and our Summer Bridge sites, and they've done hand washing vignettes and instructional vignettes to help the staff and the kids, and they're acting as a resource in the event that there's any medical questions. And you know, again, we'll continue to work diligently in planning for next year, and I would be pleased to answer any questions.
It's unfortunate that we see that there's that, you know, such a large percentage of reduction, understanding the reason for it. But I guess my real question really goes back to, are we really doing enough in the safety protocols? And I will answer the question is no, you're not. Not you, but no, we're not. There's more issues that have been identified by the CDC, by others. I won't go down into details because I'm involved with that. But there is a need to really take a look at not only hand washing, not only the separation, but how do we slow the progress of any pathogen and or virus into these locations. We're going to see increases as we continue to increase testing, but we need to really begin to focus in on how do we slow progress of this now and in the future. And I think that's an area that really needs to be addressed dramatically. I will tell you, I have been involved. I've been doing things in that area, working with across the country on some real opportunities. Unfortunately, Pinellas County and our organizations within have been fairly slow to come to work towards what these other needs can be or other opportunities could be. But we need to really focus in on how do we go and take these next steps as part of the strategy for the future.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? All right, hearing no comments. Oh,
I've got a comment. Mike, what are the next steps that you say that no one's doing?
What we're responding to is everything becomes airborne at some point in time. That's where the virus actually, as we look at it today, is when the viruses and the pathogens actually are impacting us. Unfortunately, and the CDC has identified this already, we're bringing these viruses and pathogens along the way from the bottom of our shoes into places. They become spread, and within 17 minutes, they begin to spread and expand and go on your hands, on surfaces, on everything. And you can clean it. You can clean the surfaces as many times as you like, but within that same period of time, the virus and other pathogens will continue to grow. There are devices and equipment out there that can be used to slow that process down, and they are now being reviewed and on a national level, to be quite honest, to be part of what will eventually be the future PPE plan, if I want to call it that.
Thank you.
any other comments, questions for Judith? All right. I think I see no hands, so we'll move on to item C, our proposed fiscal year 21 budget. It is an initial draft and an initial discussion this morning by Laura Brock.
Good morning. So we are here to discuss the preliminary budget presentation. And I'm going to provide a brief overview of the proposed fiscal 21 budget. I just wanted to remind you that the Finance Committee will be meeting on June 25th to review the draft budget in more detail. And also to remind the other board members, if they are interested in attending that Finance Committee meeting, they're more than welcome to. We ask that they would let Sarah Winter know so she could coordinate any Zoom meeting information.
Laura, before we proceed, would you let everyone know the time of the meeting on June 25th in case they decide? I think it's 1 o'clock, but
I believe it is 1 o'clock, correct?
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm trying to move my slide along. Just a minute here. Okay. So here is the budget timeline, just to review. So June 1st, we had the estimated taxable value of the property from the property appraisal. June 25th, as I indicated earlier, will be the meeting to present to the Finance Committee. July 1 is when we're expected to receive the certification of the taxable value from the property appraisal. And then, of course, we've got a scheduled meeting on June 9th for the board to approve the proposed millage rate as well as the preliminary budget. So August 4th is when we will be notified of the proposed millage rate. And in between these two dates, we do have a Finance Committee meeting scheduled for August 18th, which will be prior to the September 15th meeting, which will be the first trim hearing, followed by the final trim hearing meeting on September 29th. And then, of course, our fiscal year will begin October 1. So here is a schedule of the millage history that we've had going back to 2007. And you can see that in fiscal year 13, we have been at the millage rate of 8981, and that has been maintained for the past 7 years. We are recommending that we stay at that millage rate going forward as well. So our ad valorem revenues, as we have received the preliminary numbers, would be at 78.09 million compared to 74.33. And that's an increase of approximately 3.75 million, which equates to about a 5% increase. And that increase is a little smaller than the increase that we had from fiscal year 19 to 20. That increase was approximately 5 million or 5.89, but this is a smaller increase that we're anticipating. So this is a schedule that we have been tracking dating back to fiscal year 7, which was the base year for this calculation. We've been keeping track of the inflation adjustments for all these years. And based on that year of 2007 and the inflation that has occurred, we would be at 61.22 million for fiscal year 21. So this is just showing that we have stayed ahead of inflation relative to the property values in Pinellas County. So for our projected budget revenues, as indicated, the ad valorem revenues are at 78.09. We are using a percentage calculation of a 95%, which is the lowest amount that we can use with a certified taxable value. In the past, we've been using an estimated 97% collection percentage on those revenues. So that would be about a 2% decrease. The other item to point out here is on interest and earnings. And the current year, we budgeted $950,000, and we are nowhere in line with that amount due to the current economy. So we have estimated and projected for the fiscal year 20, the year we're in, to come in at approximately $688,000 in earnings. So we have conservatively budgeted $650,000 for earnings going forward. So when you combine the two of those, we're looking at about a 4.6% increase of $3.45 million to our revenue side. On the program side, we anticipate to stay pretty much in line with our continuation of program funding, as well as the net adjustments for the eligible programs, which would include both the COLAs and the lapse reductions. So a very modest increase. As far as the request for applications for capital and technology, we have boosted that a little bit to 1.25, and that was to provide more opportunities for capital and technical needs, especially in mind with the COVID situation, to assist the program, the agencies in to be able to provide the programs that they need. As far as future programming, we've kept that amount the same as well, 1.1. Although we haven't had an avid look at the strategic plan, that is something that we want to continue to work on, and Beth will be speaking about that a little bit further. So we've kept that the same. And on the contingency line item budget, since we did increase that the current year from 500 to $1 million, we decided we would leave that the same for next fiscal year as well. On the administrative side budget, our salaries are projected to increase a very modest $85,000. Our full-time equivalents would increase to 65, and those two additional persons would be someone budgeted in the programs through the FSI support, and the other full-time equivalent would be a communication coordinator. We have included a 3% cost of living for these salary increases, as well as benefits and operations. So just a modest increase in that particular administrative expenses, but pointing out that our administrative rate of 7.54% is in line with the board's recommendation of 10%. So in addition to working on the current budget, we've also put together a couple forecasts. And the forecasts are just to kind of see and take a look at where we would be going moving forward in the next 5 years. So we've put together two forecasts. This particular forecast, again, is showing that the collection percentage for the current year, and I say current, I mean fiscal 21, would be at 95%, but then that would go back to 97% throughout the rest of this particular forecast. So we've calculated the property values based on an increase of 4.5% going forward, which we felt was in line moving forward, and we've kept the millage rate at the same rate in this particular scenario as well. So you can see where we are with the revenue side would continue to increase. I point out that the other revenues, which consists primarily of your interest earnings, is reduced, and we left that number at the same going forward. So this is demonstrating that our total resources after fiscal year 21 would increase accordingly down the road. And in line with that, the administrative expenses, we maintained a 3% increase. We looked at additional program funding. We kept the RFA funds, increased that as well. Future programming. So this would be in the ideal situation whereby we have additional revenues and we can add to those programs. And so as a result, we're saying that our unassigned fund balance percentage would be at 36%, which is above the 8.3, which is 1 month of what we the board likes to have in our unassigned. And that's in addition to the 2-month cash flow reserve that we need to maintain. So this demonstrates that we would be in line relative to moving forward with those assumptions. Now, this next projection is a little more gloomier, if you would, because we calculated these numbers based on projected recession. So the fiscal 21 obviously are the numbers that we just discussed, but going forward, we were projecting that the the percentages would drop. So the property values would drop. And we used the same percentages that occurred as a result of the actual recession that we had back in 2008. So if that were to occur, we would see that the property values would decline. We maintain the 97% as well. But what we're seeing here is a big decrease, if you would, in the property values rather for the tax revenues. Keeping the earnings at the same amount without any fluctuation, we can see that our total resources that are available would continue to drop over those years going forward. Having said that, if we keep the program expenses in line with what they've been, backing away from any program COLAs or RFA money or even any future programming, and cutting back the contingency budget back to 500,000, we see that we would be dipping into our unrestricted, undesignated fund balance to the tune of $6 million in fiscal year 23, and then another 13 million in fiscal 24. So what this demonstrates is that not only would we have a decrease in our unassigned fund balance, but our unassigned balance after our 2-month cash reserve would only be at 7%, which would be lower than what the approved 8.3 board recommendation is. So this is just trying to paint a picture of what if. We know we don't have a crystal ball in front of us, but it's kind of nice to look at what alternatives we might have down the road so we can keep those in the forefront. So just to kind of summarize some of these key forecast assumptions, the property tax collections would be at 95% in fiscal year 21 and then go back to 97. In both of those projections, that's the same. As I pointed out, the unassigned fund balance would be at 36%, but in the recession scenario, it would drop down to 7%. We would continue the property values at 4.5, while under the scenario of the recession, those rates would be in line with the recession that we had in 2008. This scenario continues with the COLAs and so forth, and projected lapse, while the other scenario reduced those amounts. So again, we're just trying to take a look at the picture going forward. We know that the strategic plan development had been postponed, but the recommendation would be to maintain the current millage rate due to the economic uncertainty for COVID. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be going through this in detail on the June 25th Finance Committee meeting. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Let me just add a comment. While the, as Laura has called it, sort of the gloomier picture, we certainly know that we are in a recession that has now been officially designated. We don't know a number of things, but one of those is exactly how that's going to affect property values, which drive our revenues. We know it's going to significantly impact the people we serve. But even in that scenario and not knowing those things, we felt that this coming year was not the time to pull back significantly because of the extraordinary needs among those we serve. We did want to be realistic about, or do some sensitivity analysis about the likely impact of a recession, or perhaps what we showed you as worst case relative to property values. It's really hard to tell, but we did want to look at that. At the same time, we looked at what the county's current projections are. They will be updating their projections again soon as well, and we'll obviously be monitoring that.
Let me make a statement here. This reminds me of the 2008 recessions, as you said, and I thought we prepared for that very well. And it looks like we're following the same or similar course as Laura does her projections. And at the end of the day, we ended up being okay. And I think if we follow these guidelines, we'll end up being okay again. So, seems very wise.
Karen?
Yes, thank you. Can you explain the decision to budget for another communications coordinator, what that person will be doing, and then how many people are in our communications department at this point?
Linda, do you want to comment on that? It's actually a position that in non-COVID environment, we had approved and made a tremendous amount of sense, and really supports one strategic communication person. But Linda, you may want to broaden that comment.
Yes, Karen, we currently have 3 people in the communications department. April is our strategic communications manager. Gail is our videographer, and then Sabrina is our communications coordinator that really helps with our social media and pushing out all that information through all the various channels that we're using on social media. This new position was intended to really help us, because we're at our max bandwidth here, to help us with the events that we do, like Cooperman Vogue and the annual summit, and working those relations. And then we do a lot of community events to support Judith's department. And this would just be one person to really help facilitate that, so that the other team could remain doing what they're doing. Of course, in the current environment, maybe we're not going to have these large events anymore. So, we may not, but as Mike was saying, we're in a new future. So we are doing so much more communicating out in writing, and we're putting so much more out there that we're having a hard time keeping up in this space with getting all the information out. So we were certainly, I'm reevaluating, I'm thinking about the need, how we would use this person. And if we really do still need it, certainly don't thinking we're going to need it for events, which is actually why we had advertised it and we put it on hold, because we're not entirely sure if we need it and then exactly how we're going to use it. So hear me when I say we're not going to hire somebody if we don't need it, but that was the initial intent.
Thank you.
Looking for other comments, concerns, questions. I want to reiterate what Laura has said, is that the budget will be reviewed in great detail at the finance meeting on June 25th at 1 o'clock. And we have a couple of months. And one of the reasons that I like Beth called it nudge, I have been nudging executive staff to come back and readdress a strategic movement, whatever that looks like, before we go too far down the line and approve this budget in September. So at the next agenda item, Brett will give you an update of our discussions. But any other comments before the June 25th meeting to pick, if you will, pick apart the budget a little bit more? I want to congratulate, as I fill the air here, we've been talking about this budget. I think Beth and I started the discussion back in February about how the staff was going to proceed with these 2 forecasts, because it was important for us, as Bernie said, that we needed to have 2 forecasts to prepare for the worst case scenario. And I believe the staff has done a Herculean job, considering, Laura, your first day on the job, I think, was April 13th. So just congratulations for all the work that's been done under the umbrella of COVID and the extra demands on staff. So thank you. And seeing no hands raised, I think at this point, we'll move on to Beth and the executive director's report. I think you're muted, Beth.
There we go. Thank you. First, I just want to clarify that the Finance Committee meeting on June 25th is at 1:30. So we earlier misspoke, our apologies. The first thing I wanted to mention were the uncertainties in the fiscal 21 budget, which while we've just talked about, I would want to let you know that besides COVID and besides what our tax revenue may be, as if those aren't enough uncertainties, in large part created by those things, we also are watching the changes in childcare capacity and need, out of school time programming, family service initiative, the children's mental health initiative, and knowing full well that we are seeing and will continue to see post-COVID trauma and behavioral issues for children. So how should that initiative pivot to respond to those needs? Domestic violence program and shelter capacity. We all know that both recessions and certainly the lockdown and quarantine, self-quarantining of people has every reason to, has every indication of increasing domestic violence on all fronts. So those are things we either are watching very carefully, or we know will shift and change, but of course we don't know the magnitude of those shifts and changes. And those are just a few. There are certainly others. So it is certainly the most uncertain environment for us, but I would want you to know that we're monitoring those things as we go along. The second thing I wanted to talk about is an emphasis on 0 to 3. Last winter and spring, there was a lot of board interest and momentum building for the 0 to 3 population and the potential for the JWB to have an enhanced role in this space. And I would say, in all transparency, we had a sort of an expectation that from feedback from the board and others, that at our March 31st strategic planning session that never occurred, that might be an area that's pulled out of our one of our strategic areas and had its own space. We had several board presentations, some regarding possibilities, both the needs and the possibilities of programming for the 0 to 3 population. It's not that we don't do significant programming now, we do, but where we could have a greater impact. And then COVID happened, and needless to say, we were not able to have that meeting. It was your chair's decision, and the executive team agreed at that point, but that was at that point that we really wanted to have that workshop in person. And of course, in mid-March, most of us didn't believe we would still be doing Zoom meetings in June, but here we are, and we don't know how much longer it will last. So I would want you to know that we haven't left that space entirely. We are continuing to do investigation and research on some of the best practices and possibilities. It has always been the case that in the first year, even of an area being added to our repertoire, we haven't spent a significant amount of money. We've spent more time thinking, planning, and looking at alternatives. And so I would want you to know that as to that 0 to 3, we are in fact already doing a fair amount of that. Before we added anything programmatically, obviously it would come to the board. So as has been referenced by our chair and by others, we have been thinking through how it is we could do strategic planning on a virtual basis. And I wanted to be able today to tell you exactly how we could do that in July, but I would tell you we're not quite there. So our chair and I and executive team and IT people and council will continue to have discussions. I will just say that the combination of when the executive order lapses and the requirement to give 7 days notice, and the fact that the Tampa Bay Times, the only place where we can give printed notice, is only printed twice a week, make all of that timing incredibly difficult. to legally stay within our bounds and do exactly what we need to do. So we are, however, investigating how we could do that. Collaborative Labs has in fact done their usual, I won't say their usual process, but a similar process using Zoom. And so we wouldn't be their test case. They have done some of that with feedback. And because we don't know how long it will be before we can sit in a room together, and because as Susan said and Mike McCurrick has said, you know, how long, we don't want to wait too long before we re-examine our strategy. So just to say, we are working on that. It may not be that we can combine that with the July 5th meeting due to, or July 9th rather, due to all the factors that I just talked about. But we might look at having a separate session in July when at least we'll know whether, you know, we won't have this problem of notice and the executive order, you know, crossing timelines in ways that make it almost impossible. So we will get the long and the short of all of that is we are working to try to provide a session. We're working out how we can do that. And obviously we'll survey you relative to available dates if we add a date. And that's the end of my report. And obviously I'm open for any questions.
One of the things that I did ask is that we typically don't have a board meeting in August. And with most of us curtailing our travel, there is a possibility that we could reactivate an August meeting to accomplish just this. But as Beth has said, the hieroglyphics of when the governor makes a decision that we can continue virtual meetings, coupled with all of the other technicalities of us meeting, but it could very well be an early August potential strategic planning virtual experience. So again, it's too soon. The governor has, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the decisions about extending the virtual government meetings have happened within days of the prior expiring. So it's not something we're going to know right away.
That has been typical. I think Colleen has let us know that the re-up of some of those executive orders, most of them we have known about 48 hours before they lapsed. So it makes it that much more difficult to plan ahead for a meeting that's within a fairly short period of time after the initial date of an executive order.
Questions, comments? Bob, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I have a concern, and that is, I don't remember the numbers that the clerk gave us, but the numbers were quite large on evictions that are on a moratorium. And I'm wondering if we have any idea how that's going to impact the FSI when, I mean, we're talking thousands.
Yes.
People getting evicted, potentially being homeless, children being evicted. If we have any sense of reserves for that.
Well, Susan might speak first to the meeting you were in yesterday, and then I'll respond about FSI.
Right. So yesterday I attended the monthly meeting of United Way Community Impact. And at the end of the meeting, it was very shocking to me. The numbers that came out yesterday, just looking at the month of July, if the governor does not postpone the eviction protection, if we just look at July, as of yesterday, they were looking about 800 to 900, with the majority being in Hillsborough. I think it was 600 out of Hillsborough County, and in our county, you know, that 300 to 400, but that was really just for July. So the projection that they received yesterday at United Way, as Bob's point, we could be facing 2,000 homeless families in the next 3 months. And the other comment that I made prior to today's meeting to the group that came on early is that they're involving large groups of people now because the police would actually be delivering the eviction notices early July, and police are pretty busy. So again, the impact of this is already bubbling to a crescendo. And I spoke to Beth about this, spoke to Linda Leedy late last night when we connected. But Bob, you're right on. I think the fallout from this is going to just spill over the entire Tampa Bay area. And not just as an aside note, what the numbers that were coming in while we were actually on the United Way Zoom meeting yesterday is they're looking at South, Manatee, Sarasota, could even far exceed any projection that anyone has. So the new numbers coming in about south of us. So again, I put that information out that I was a bit appalled yesterday, and I try to get that information back to JWB.
So let me ask a question, Bob, and then also respond. Is it possible for us to be in contact with the clerk's office to know and be able to reach out to those families?
The first part, he has the numbers and he gave them to us a while back when Bernie and I were in some meeting. Whether he can let you get in contact with the people, I assume if it's been filed, it's public record. And I would think he would want to cooperate with you. But if you go back to March, you're talking a lot of people, just like
Yes.
the backlog in small claims and backlog at crime. I just am worried about a large number of people hitting the street
Yep.
with kids. So
Without
I
a
think the
doubt.
clerk would be, I obviously can't speak for him, but he's been cooperative in providing the information that we wanted.
Okay.
So
Well, we
I
will.
just think,
We'll have our FSI folks follow up on that specifically. But then as to your question, there are at least a couple variables. We've been concerned about this since the moment we knew COVID was going to put a lot of people out of work. So and we saw in April, in March and April in particular, our FSI funding really spike. Up to that time in the year, we were looking to lapse quite a bit of money in that program. Knowing that more people were going to be impacted, we loosened some of the criteria in March with that knowledge. The other major unknown to us is what the county will do with the COVID CARES program, whether that will go past the month of June or not. And Karen can obviously speak to, what the county's process is. I know they're receiving lots of input in this week and next week, and will be making some important decisions soon. But that will have a significant impact, and also what its rules are will have a significant impact. I can't tell you that I can assure you we have enough FSI dollars if all the worst occurs, and if the county does not continue its COVID CARES program and perhaps open it to more months of rent. But what I can tell you is that we have a lot more available than we would have expected to have at this time. And as we monitor it, we will absolutely come back to you on an emergency or contingency basis if we need to.
Let me ask a question, and I was going to ask when Laura presented. Do we have anything that's contingent on the state budget that has not yet been reviewed by the governor?
I don't believe we have anything that, you know, some of the agencies, well, many of the agencies we support do, but we do not.
Okay, thank you. Because who knows
Oh, absolutely.
who knows what he's going to veto.
Yeah, many of the areas we support and the programs we support have significant risk in that area,
All right.
but our
Thank you.
budget does not.
And for those that weren't on the pre-meeting sort of discussion we had about this topic, what was also discussed yesterday, and many of you probably already know this, that the Bay Area Legal Services and all of the work that's being done with the initial group of families and the landlords to recognize that a landlord or an owner may be better served to receive partial payments than avoid the expense of eviction, having a vacancy. So Healthy St. Pete, the Foundation for Healthy St. Pete, the Pinellas Community Foundation, trying to pull together all the pools of money that could be available. But the time is marching because we could be facing July 4th for this, again, if the governor does not extend the eviction protection.
And we were asked early on in this process if we could join with the agencies, the organizations that Susan just talked about in a joint fund that would be then jointly decided upon. And I declined to do that because this board has to approve what it is and how we spend money, not a third party, but that we would very much want to be walking side by side with them in close communication and coordination with that group. And I believe it's called the Resiliency Fund that they have created together.
Commissioner Seal?
Thank you. I keep trying to raise my hand. So apparently, as many of you may or may not know, we received 170 million approximately in federal dollars from the CARES Act, and we've allocated presently about 70 million for small business assistance as well as individual assistance. What most folks don't realize, and we've tried to emphasize this, is that through 211, so let's say somebody has lost their job. When they go for income eligibility, they have no income. So they are eligible. So it doesn't base it on last year's income, it's your current income. So we have been surprised about the lack of applications. And in talking with others, we understand the city of St. Petersburg in their usual process of offering rental assistance and other programs like that, they also saw a reduction in numbers. So we're all thinking that this could be because landlords and mortgage and banks have said, we'll give you some time to come back and pay your mortgage and pay your rent. We know that this isn't going to last because we're going to start to see, we are starting to see as noted that evictions will increase. So if there is a way to help us help those in need, please let me know. If you all want to take a look at the Pinellas County's page or contact me through Beth, obviously, because of Sunshine Law, you can't contact me directly. But if you have some ideas as to what this program should do and help going forward, especially with income restrictions. So right now we're at a one-person household of about 2,127 per month, or 4,367 for four-person household. The main thing that has to be noted is that they can't have more than $4,000 in liquid assets, which is cash, savings, and checking account. So we may need to broaden that category, and certainly I've talked about increasing to maybe 300% of federal poverty level. We also are looking at the small business assistance program and trying to open that up to cover more people and not have, right now it's kind of essential businesses that are covered, and we'd like to maybe look at changing that as well. So right now the programs both are through June 30th as noted, but we will be continuing them with some changes. So I hope that helps to give you all some more information. You know, the individual assistance is directly for, if we can pay their rent directly, we can pay their mortgage directly, or utilities directly as well. So there is help out there, and we will continue to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it was a program put together well, but very quickly, and turned a spigot on. And I know, as Commissioner Seal knows, both, 211 and the county staff are working, in Herculean ways to make this work. But because it's government dollars, there are a number of documents that somebody has to provide, and that takes time. And then those have to be collated and reviewed, and that takes time. So it's been a huge spike in 211 calls, an unfortunate spike in average speed of answer and abandoned calls at 211. I can't remember the number, but what, 30 some county staff, or Linda may know exactly, that have been added to that effort. And you would want to know that, because 211 shares the building with us, because we have not been in the building. We provided the county staff access to our large conference room, and I think 105 as well, to use that space in support of the program.
Another subject that I did want to mention is we are currently at Pinellas County setting up at the county extension on Almerton Road, the Magnolia Room for public meetings. So if JWB does want to have a public meeting after June 23rd, please let me know, and we'll see if we could schedule JWB to use this room. It will be set up for social distancing. It will be set up with the ability to film live meetings and other capabilities. So I did want to mention that to you all.
Good. I don't see other hands right now. So I'll move on to see if anybody has an interest in pulling any of the information items off of the agenda. Again, seeing no hands. Laura Peel, do we have a request during the open agenda for any public comment?
I want to give it a moment,
Right.
but as of right now, no. I do not see any hands up, no request to speak.
Okay, then I'll move over to Mr. Butler. You have some announcements to make on anniversaries. Up, you're on mute, sir.
One year. Richard Godfrey, 7 years. Laura Peel, 27 years. And that was in May. Now we moved to June. And that's Nicholas Menadino, 4 years. Megan Seals, 9 years. Sabi, where's my cheat sheet? I don't have my cheat sheet. Gadicelli, 14 years. And Lynn Delator, 17 years. Now you can applaud.
Very good. Congratulations, everybody.
Congratulations.
And good work being done by all. Before we go to adjournment, please look at the agenda for the future meetings of the board. July 9th is our next meeting, and it will be determined. It looks It's undetermined where we're going to meet, so stay tuned. And at this moment, not in August, but as we've said, all right, I'll be back to you, Mike, in just a second. And then make sure that your calendars are updated with the September meetings, and they will include the board meeting and the trim meetings. That it's a little bit of a time alteration. So make sure those make your calendar. So again, before I call for adjournment, Mike, I saw your hand up, Mike McAra.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I've been trying to stay out of any issues with sunshine and the like. But if anybody's interested in seeing more about what I was trying to talk about in reducing the flow of not only COVID virus, but also all other pathogens, and the information from studies from the CDC, NSF, and others, I'd be more than happy to provide that information to you.
Good, you can send that in to staff and they can send it back out to all of us. I think that would be a really good piece of information for all of us to receive. And I thank you very much on that.
Yeah, but just understand it may look a bit like a sales pitch, but I'm not selling you. I'm just giving you that information, but it's all embedded in.
Okay. Final comments? Then let's call for an adjournment. I see your hand up, Mr. Ongst and Mr. McCurrick. Do we need a roll call or are we done? No roll call. We're done, says our attorney. Have a wonderful day and we'll be in touch.
Thank you all. Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.